TexianPride.com is the destination for Texans who want to show off their love for Texas. We don't settle for mediocre. Our shirts are made from 100% high-quality athletic cotton. They're cool, comfortable, and designed to fit and flatter any body type. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Visit TexianPride.com for your next stylish Texas tee.
Standing up in McKinney. This is, according to Callis, episode 691, coming to you on the year of our Lord's Day, September the 16th, 2024. Now, I apologize. I had full intent on making an episode. It was going to actually be talking about the need to work on the future and how do we stay on the same team even when we can't necessarily be on the same page. Kind of got off the rails. It didn't happen. Life got in the way, and then, of course, they took another shot. It reminds me of the song, I want to say it was from the mid-'90s, Hey Man, Nice Shot. In this case, 2 bad shots, or more than one, or should I say more than 2 bad shooters. At this point, they've probably killed the episode. I could probably just say, what are we coming to, and call it a day, right? I don't know what else to tell you. It's just, on the one hand, it shouldn't surprise me, but on the other hand, it's like we sink to a new low every day that goes by. So let's talk a little bit about that. Before I get there, let me remind you the best way that you can continue to help me make a difference is to get the word out, right? This is the alternative media. This is one man's apologize for the interruption there. One man's understanding of the world around him, right? As I've said many, many times, this show is my opinion, my understanding. Don't claim to be perfect. Don't claim to know it all. But I do my best to talk about things that maybe, just maybe, you're thinking about too, but we just don't ever hear about it or see about it in normal channels. I don't want to get into the why and the wherefore there. Just suffice it to say, you're not alone, and we must carry on. Like, share, and subscribing to this podcast helps with that. Taking the time out to rate and review this podcast helps us overcome the algorithm that is not our friend. Now you got to ask yourself, why does the algorithm care? Why does anybody care? I'm just some little old me in McKinney, Texas. I think, honestly, they're afraid that if they don't control everything, they'll lose control, period. I mean, even if I were to get 1,000 downloads to every episode and it's going nationwide, I'm not certain that that's going to have the effect that they fear. But think about it this way. If there's 1,000 other podcasters like me and they have 1,000 listeners themselves, that's at least 1 million people there, right? And there's not just 1,000 podcasters, and there's not just 1,000 listeners. It goes many times over. That's what they do. Now, am I saying boo-hoo? No. I'm just telling you. That's what we're dealing with. Let's be honest. All right. Enough of the opening. As much as I might like to, rant on that, that's not what you come here for. At least I don't think you do. The tagline of, you may not care about politics, but politics cares about you, is as true today as it was when I started this podcast. It's alive and well. Now, say what you want, but the former future president claims that they're 0-2 now. At what point are we going to realize that something's wrong? I mean, even though they prevented it, they stopped it, I can't imagine in a world where twice within a month, the Secret Service was so slack in their security that another person got through. Now, there are people all over the world that are delving into conspiracy theories and looking into this. Now, look, I'm a believer of the conspiracy theory of history, right? People are always working together to get certain things done and make changes. I believe that wholeheartedly. It doesn't mean that they're always right. It doesn't mean that there's always wrong. But to look at a conspiracy is to understand the world that we live in. Something's not right here. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. It just doesn't seem right. And when something doesn't seem right, it usually isn't. So when we're doing this, we're now talking about the politics of destruction, right? When we had Bill Clinton in office, we got the lecture about the politics of personal destruction. Well, if I remember correctly, Bill did his own personal destruction, right? He had the wandering eye and the wandering appendages. Now, I can't tell you that if I was a non-Christian man, that if I wasn't, bound by marriage, that I wouldn't have behaved in a similar way, given those two circumstances, right? But he claimed to be a church-going man, and he claimed to be married. So that's a failure at least 2 points. And the thing is, I don't believe anybody's completely above this. I don't believe anybody can escape forever. You just have to do your best to avoid it. And so when we're talking about the politics of personal destruction, that is things that are within your control, right? Say what you want about Pence. I'm not a huge fan, but he had the Pence rule. And the Pence rule was a similar rule that I live by, which I guess comes from Billy Graham, but I'm not really sure who the originator is. That is if you're a married man, you have no business being in a closed room with another woman. Now, there are certain exceptions, if you will, but as a general rule, it shouldn't happen. Just a bad idea. Whether if you're worried about yourself or her or both of you, it's just something that you should avoid. It's kept me out of trouble. It would have probably potentially kept a lot of other people out of trouble. Now, as for the current guy running for office, who is the former and future president, I don't think he's ever been concerned about that a day in his life. As a matter of fact, I've got deep qualms about some of the things this guy does, but at the end of the day, that's the best choice we got. And I'll take it all day long, twice on Sunday. Somebody out there's protecting him. Say what you want, but by all rights, that guy should be not with us anymore. Now, whether it's, God the Father pulling out all the stops or just providing a little extra cover, or whether there's something else more sinister at play, I don't know. I don't pretend to know. Quite frankly, I'm not going to go down that road. But we're talking about the idea that assassination is a thing in these United States, and there's at least 2 known attempts. These are the ones we know about. It doesn't say that there haven't been more that we don't know about. I'd hazard a guess that there's a whole lot at stake here. I also suspect that it has something to do with the fact that the people that are in power want to stay in power, and they want a war. Now, again, I've said before, the Ukraine-Russia situation, they're both led by what I would call bad actors. I would say, if I was going to give credit to Putin for anything, I think he legitimately loves his country, and he's doing what he thinks is best for his country. I can't say the same for the leader of Ukraine. I certainly can't say the same for the current leadership of these United States, or NATO for that matter, but that's where we're at. So they keep playing games to get us into a war, and you got to ask yourself, what's the point? Why? I mean, yeah, they're making money. Yeah, they're Oh boy, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but they're really somebody's getting some pay, right? They're funneling all that money through Ukraine. Somebody's getting a little something on the side, and it doesn't matter what letters after their name. I'm sure it's on both sides of the equation here, because just remember, they know deep down they don't work for us. And that's a scary thought, right? So they're personally trying to destroy the one guy that's out there that might be able to stop them. They're doing everything they can to prevent him. Now, of course, there is the corollary, sinister view of this. This is all a big game. They're putting on a big show. So we go and elect this guy, and, the Fourth Reich is unleashed on us. Now, I don't believe that, not for 1 second. I mean, the panic and hysteria out of the left is enormously funny to me, because they're the very people that are doing the very things that they're claiming that Trump is going to do. And the fact that they don't notice that that's the case, the fact that they completely ignore what's going on around them, is just surprising to me. It just doesn't end. I mean, if you take away the fact that, roughly 50% of the population wants the ability to be able to kill their offspring, and for that reason alone, they hate the Donald, who, quite frankly, this isn't even his biggest, most important issue. Not even close. But they hate him for it because, it just cramps their style. And yes, I'm being very broad-stroked here, right? The brush is 12 foot wide here. Yeah, I know there's a ton of nuance in there. I don't care. For the purpose of this discussion, what would motivate you to want to go and kill the guy? That's what I want to know. I mean, is it the money? Is it the fact that he put a wrench in your ability to terminate your offspring? I mean, they tapped into an income stream for Planned Parenthood. I mean, they've already found ways to go castrate kids, right? We're castrating kids for their own good. Pretty sure SCOTUS said that was a bad idea when people were mentally unfit to do it, but now apparently we're going to find mentally unfit people, convince them that this is going to fix their problems, and we're going to cash in while we're doing it. Hey, but that's the world we live in now. And just in case you're curious, we're just going to send a ton of your money over to Ukraine. And while we're at it, we'll throw some over at Israel as well, because, they're not happy unless they're killing Arabs or Palestinians or vice versa, right? It's just the way it works. I don't see any other explanation. I mean, look, I'm not taking sides on this specific issue because it goes back thousands of years. And, my eschatology would tell me that the Israelis are right. Common sense would tell me is they're both wrong. Right? What's going to end? Well, Jesus is going to come back and put an end to it. That's the only time it's going to end. There's very little I can do. All I know is I can't curse Israel. So I guess I got to I'm going to suck it up and keep finding a way to support them, even though I don't necessarily support what they're doing right this minute. I understand the need for survival. I understand that there's worries there, and I think that's legitimate. Can the same be said for everything the United States is meddling in? I mean, really and truly, we're trying to turn Ukraine into NATO organization, and Russia said from the get-go, we don't want NATO on our doorstep. We want a cushion country. And now that you're going to play these games, we're going to create a cushion country. Why does that surprise anybody? In much the same way, the Muslim Islamic folks, they don't want people near them that aren't Muslim or Islamic. It's only a matter of time before they get enough power, reserves, whatever, and they're going to try again to take over. Now, I don't know that there's any place left to run and hide. I mean, if you're Ukrainian, I'm pretty sure you're pretty tied into Ukraine. I'm told, I don't know if this is true, the only difference between a Ukrainian and a Pole is one has the Pope and the other doesn't. I don't know what else to do or say about that. I do find it somewhat humorous. And I will just say that joke was told to me by a guy that's married to a Ukrainian. So we're just going to leave that one alone. There's always been war and strife. And I'm not sure why we're going around the world looking for demons to fight. We have our own demons right here in these United States. In fact, we didn't have enough of them here by natural right. No. We thought we'd import some more. Now, I find it quite astonishing that we've got people that are concerned about the Haitians that were imported here. I'm concerned about the Haitians that are in Haiti. I'm less concerned about the Haitians that have come here and tried to turn in their city into Haiti. Not sure what to tell you about that. I'm not an enthusiastic supporter of turning these United States into a third world country, but it seems like certain people in upper management in D.C. think that they can win more elections if they depress and destroy areas that were formerly bright red, or currently are bright red and just haven't been flipped yet. So if they didn't have enough external wars, they're bringing about an internal war. It's as if they want to bring about division at any cost, right? We want you to hate the opponent running for office. And it goes both ways. I mean, look, Kamala Harris, I mean, it's pretty close to what she is. It's like a legitimate statement, not just a throwaway line. And she went and found the one guy out there that is probably even further towards the communist line than she is. And they're running, and they're apparently legitimate candidates, though nobody really voted for them in the primaries. But this is what we got stuck with. And the scary thing is, they're going to try and convince us that they got a majority of the popular vote. Whether or not they win the Electoral College, they're going to try and claim that they got a majority of the popular vote and that we're actually a leftist, socialist, communist country. I got to tell you, I'm not okay with that. I think that's a recipe for disaster. I mean, just think about what Minnesota used to be like. Think about what Michigan used to be like. Are they better now than they were 15 years ago? Is there any significant metric that you can say objectively that Michigan or Minnesota is better? Is there anything there that is a net positive? I think we already know the answer. And it's not without consequence that you went and imported people, dumped them in massive quantities into areas that were, let's say, conducive to them thriving. I mean, Minneapolis, St. Paul, that is a giant blue city in a, let's say, moderately light blue state, led by the farm labor wing of the Democrat Party for decades. I mean, they were already quasi-socialist up there to start out with. So then they just went and dumped a bunch of Somali Muslims. How's that working out for us? Just saying. And then you look over at Michigan, which, you know, once upon a time it was at least a swing state. I guess theoretically it's still a swing state. Maybe. You got a crazy leftist running the state. They've turned in large portions of Detroit into Muslim center, right? Dearbornistan is a thing. Has that been a net positive? There's no assimilation left. We've created these communities that we put next to other communities and act surprised when there's strife or concern or when there's problems. Now, I believe, and I've always kind of held to this notion, that immigration's like seasoning. A little bit is good and maybe improves things, but too much will ruin the dish, right? We talked about the soup or the stew, right? The melting pot of America. Yeah, that was kind of sort of a thing when I was a little kid back in the early 70s. And then they called it the salad bowl. Well, now, what do we call it? A ruined recipe? I mean, seriously. It's like they're strategically destroying certain parts of the country, trying to gin up a fight. They're trying to bring in this division and destruction to areas, and I think they're doing it on purpose. I don't know what else to conclude. And what's interesting to me is anybody that defends themselves or defends their community is branded the bad guy. Oh, you're divisive. You're a hater. You're the problem. How can you not like this diversity? How can you not like the immigrants? How can you not like this, that, or the other thing? And when you say, well, yeah, that's fine, but we had 40,000 people, now we got 16,000 extra people, and the whole thing's changed. And what's that, Springdale, Ohio? A town of 60,000, and they got between 15 and 20,000 dropped in on them? I mean, that's a 20% change plus of their community. You think that's not going to cause problems? I mean, maybe they could have put them in Detroit, right? I mean, Detroit's nearly vacant. Or how about Kansas City? Some of these other, formerly Democrat-held strongholds that have tons of buildings readily available for people that just came out of the third world. They'd probably be thrilled to death to have some of these older, more dilapidated buildings that they could easily fix up had they been given the opportunity. I'm not suggesting they should live in hovels or broken down homes, but they're open, they're available. In many cases, the city actually owns these properties. Why don't you let the people move there and tell them, hey, go ahead and fix it. We're going to give you both of these houses side by side so you can scavenge out of this house to fix that house. I mean, to me, it just seems like normal logic, but better yet, rather than do that, rather than importing 100,000 people from a third world country, why don't you go to the people that already live in the area and say, I know you're poor, you're downtrodden, you've already been here for generations, and you just can't seem to make things work because of our really bad policies that destroyed things around here. But there's this house that's empty and it's attracting, crime and other problems. If you'll move there and you'll fix it up, we're going to give you a lease for 50 years on this house or whatever. Give them an opportunity to build up some credit or some livelihood. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's that hard to figure this stuff out if you will just think out of the box. If you'll just, care about the people that you say you're serving. But again, going back to the first point, I think all these elected officials have finally figured out, well, not finally, have really figured out and have finally let us know that they know they don't in fact work for us. And that should be disturbing and disappointing to all of you. Even if you subscribe to the idea that we're a democracy, you would expect that by voting and supporting for these elected officials, they'd have some modicum of responsibility to take care of the people that put them there. But even for those of us that believe in a republic and that these are our people that are supposed to go represent us and we are the key component to them going there, they routinely dismiss us because, well, they got a little benefactor on the side that ensures what they get. It's no coincidence that the power brokers always get what they want. Do you really think there's a groundswell of need or desire for casino gambling in Texas? I doubt it. And I know all the arguments, or at least most all of the arguments. And I will grant you that it is entirely possible we might see a few dollars net positive from casino gambling coming to Texas. Maybe. But we haven't considered the costs. We haven't considered the externalities that economists frequently talk about. We haven't considered the burden put upon the areas where they come to locate. Now, I'm not hating on them. I don't have any preconceived notion that gambling in and of itself is bad. I don't have any huge issues with it. Most of these vice things, aside from my Christianity says these are bad things. But if you are a non-Christian, you're not bound by my faith. But I also want a little common sense and respectability to the community I live in. And I'm just guessing that a gambling den that has, I don't know, a bunch of people smoking pot or just cigarettes for that matter, or getting wasted on other drugs or drunk, probably not a good look for the city or the town or the state. And then when you follow along with that, there's probably going to be a higher level of prostitution that already exists, because prostitution's always existed. It'll be more in the open than what it once was, because, it just follows. Casinos, other vices. Nobody wants to consider that. And maybe it's not fair. Maybe it's that slippery slope thing, right? We shouldn't take that fallacy. But the reality states one follows the other. You can see that play out everywhere. And the other question, if casinos work so great and they're such a net positive, why is New Jersey the way it is? Why has Atlantic City got all the problems that it's had? Certainly there's a lot more people near Atlantic City than would be in Texas, where they would want to put this destination resort. I talked about previously that setting aside all the vice concerns, setting aside everything else, again, because I believe this is about divisive as issue as you're going to get in Texas for many, many people. Not all, but a lot of people, they get really spun up about this. They can't answer how they're going to get adequate water. They can't answer how they're going to get adequate electrical power. I'm sure it's going to come out of our pockets. So again, there's another trade-off, right? There's a cost associated with bringing this in. I don't see it as a boon for Texas. I just don't. I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but I'm not sold. I'm not convinced. Likewise, I've said many, many times, we can't fix what goes on in D.C. We can't deal with what's going on in these other states. We have our own problems in our own state, and the very same people that are trying to shove through destination resort casinos don't see fit to give us the opportunity to decide whether or not we want to be an independent nation. They don't think that we're smart enough or able to make that determination, but they have zero problem telling us, you're just going to go ahead and saddle up and put these big casinos in, and y'all might see, a few cents off of that tax bill. And they're going to try and sell it under that idea. They're going to gloss over any costs, gloss over any externalities, They're going to just tell you about this money that you're allegedly going to save. Well, let me ask you, has the casino going to pay out better than the lottery? Because the lottery really hasn't paid out either, has it? They sold us a false bill of goods. Now, again, if that's something you really want and we put it to a vote and we vote that that's what we want in Texas, okay. I'm willing to accept that, but my counteroffer is, if you're going to put that on the ballot, why wouldn't we put the ballot on should Texas seek to become an independent nation again? I mean, because if we're apparently capable of deciding whether or not we want to have casino-style gambling in a destination resort here in Texas, we ought to be able to consider whether or not we want to be an independent free nation again. I mean, Great Britain did it, Scotland did it, Quebec did it. Several other nations in Africa, which, well, say what you want, they were able to do it. In Europe, in Asia, states break apart. States separate. It's got a process possible to do this, but we're not smart enough, we're not capable enough to make this decision, or so we're told. And those of us that bring up the issue are dismissed. No offense, whatever, I don't care. I will tell you, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to put down this fight. It doesn't matter what I think. What matters is we have a responsibility that the people of Texas ought to be heard. To put a ballot measure on is to not require you to take a position on the outcome. It only requires you to listen to your people, and they want to be heard. And if you're right, if it's truly just a small, tiny percentage that want something like this, then the ballot will show that. But again, we're not smart enough. We're not informed enough. We're not capable of making a decision on our own. They have to protect us from ourselves, apparently. Call me dubious. I'm not convinced. So we started out talking about they're 0-2. We drifted onto the notion of the politics of destruction. I transitioned that into the notion that really they're just looking for a war. They're looking to make something happen. And it's not enough to do that abroad. They're bringing it here. They're bringing it home. They're sowing the seeds of our own destruction here and dissolution through war. And yet the very thing that could perhaps push that off, perhaps offer us options, perhaps make a difference in our future, they are withholding from us. So if you're listening to the sound of my voice and you're within the sovereign state of Texas, I would kindly ask you, would you like to be heard on this issue? Now, I'm not asking you if you support it or you oppose it. I'm asking, would you like to be heard on this issue? Because if you do, if you have any interest in seeing what the temperature is, if you will, in Texas for independence, call your state rep, call your state senator, call the governor, call the lieutenant governor. Let the people know, hey, we want to be heard. And guess what? If you all shout it down, right? In other words, we have a vote and the pro-Texit people get 20% of the vote. Okay, you win. Point made. Let's move on. We'll work towards other avenues of independence, other avenues of liberty, right? Keep in mind, I've always been the biggest proponent of de facto independence, working towards a de jure independence. So that doesn't hurt me in the least. I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm just telling you, the fact that they won't let us talk about it, they won't let us have this discussion, you got to ask yourself, why? Why? And until we get an answer to that, we only have to look at all the other stuff they're doing, whether it's overseas, at the nation, or even right here in Texas, and figure out it's because they're not interested in what we want. They're not interested in the people that they supposedly work for. They're interested in what the people that they really work for want. And with that, this has been According to Callus. And yes, I will see you on the other side.
Wanted. Young men to rebuild Western civilization. Must be unafraid of pain, blisters, intellectual rigor, and a lifetime of long shifts with swords and shovels, digging ditches, repelling invaders, and reading stacks of books taller than their fathers. Must be impervious to manipulative women of all sorts, giggling virgins, cyber skanks, and even full cauldrons of Karens or hand-wringing clergy, but always seeking to hear and heed the words of Lady Wisdom. Immune to the leadership of hypocrites and LARPing online masculinitats, unaffected by abusive authorities, petty professors, and all brokers of official respectability. Willing to hoist the Jolly Roger and Johnny Cash's favorite finger whenever faced with idolatry. Long-suffering joy and determination required. Must be willing to dwell among the tombs and graves of the long dead, seeking truths that cannot die. Exhaustion guaranteed. Conflict guaranteed. Mortality guaranteed. New St. Andrews College. Liberal arts for the undaunted.